Okay. Okay, we're good to start. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the first computer science tech talk for 2022. We are very fortunate this morning to have the South African Revenue Services with us this morning. I just want to mention a few ground rules before I start the program. In terms of the POPIA Act, the seminar series will be recorded and will be available on our website, including distributed to those that have registered. I would like now to hand over to Dr. Mandla Gwetu, who is the academic leader for computer science. Thank you, Mandla.
Thank you so much, Lena. Welcome, everyone. Good day to our students and our esteemed guests from SARS. It's so good to have all of you here. My name is Mandla Gwetu. I'm the academic leader of computer science. This is an exciting time to be a computer scientist and to be in IT in general, because we're experiencing the fourth industrial revolution and there's need for computers everywhere. So it's an exciting time to be able to make a contribution. So this is the first of our series in terms of tech talks. And today we are honored to have the South African Revenue Service. The idea behind these tech talks is to be of benefit to you, our students. Firstly, in terms of creating opportunities or facilitating, knowledge transfer in terms of how to get jobs, bringing our industry partners to talk to you about some of the opportunities they have. Secondly, to give you an opportunity to hear from the experts in the industry. And that way we can get to complement the theoretical knowledge, the practical experience that we give you on campus. You can extend this and hear from actual real experts, that are practicing some of these things in industry. So as I've said, today we're hosting SARS and we're introducing you to people who make things happen in this country. Now, these people right now, as your students, are probably the most generous people that you know. They make things happen. They make our roads, get repaired. They fund all of that. And they actually make your higher education possible. But at some point, after you graduate and you become, part of the working class, you will find that these people are people that you get to respect very highly, right? Because they have to make sure that everybody complies in terms of the tax regulations of this country. And you can imagine how, that compliance, facilitating all of that, how many computers are required to make that, to keep track meticulously, about, all the revenue that's generated and so forth and so on. So it must be a real huge task. And it's really exciting to hear, from our speakers today to find out, how does all of that happen? How do we maintain quality through it all? And most importantly, perhaps you might be wondering, how can I get involved? How can I be part of this exciting journey? So that's what we have in store for you. But before we get to that, just to let you know a bit about our ground rules for today, I just encourage you to have notepads, pens and papers, take notes, because these are unique opportunities. You want to empower yourself. You want to complement the knowledge that you get in the classroom. You're going to get some useful tips in terms of how to apply for jobs, how to present yourself. And also you want to gain extra knowledge, from our experts that we've invited today. I encourage you to engage, take notes, as I've said before. And if you have any questions, we're going to having a chat box that you can type your question, and that chat box is going to be monitored throughout the talk. There's experts on standby who will be able to respond to the questions that you type. So my encouragement is get involved, get upskilled. And this is part of our initiative jointly as a university and partnering with industry to give you a better experience while you are at UKZN. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to start by introducing one of our speakers, and this speaker is going to assist us just in terms of getting us to be familiar with the procedure that's involved in HR, in terms of how to apply for posts and whatnot. So our first speaker is Zanie Marais. Zanie is the manager of Graduate Development Program, of the Graduate Developer Program and External Bursary Scheme at SARS. Her career at SARS started in 1996 when she was appointed as a VAT auditor. She was, however, soon thereafter transferred to an integrated audit team responsible for conducting audits on multiple taxes. In 2010, she was appointed as an audit specialist in the Integrated Audit Division. Her knowledge of tax and her passion for the development of young talent, such as you guys, led her to her appointment as manager of the graduates in the Integrated Audit Division. In 2015, she became the manager for all graduate development programs within SARS. She holds a Bachelor of Commerce from the University of Pretoria, a higher education diploma, also from the University of Pretoria, and a higher diploma in tax from RAU. Zanie, it's a great privilege to have you, and I will take this opportunity to hand over to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for the introduction, Dr. Gwetu. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I want to start by thanking the organizers of this event for the chance to share with you, the students of UKZN, the recruitment opportunities that we have at SARS for graduates. SARS is on an exciting journey to build a smart, modern SARS with unquestionable integrity, trusted and admired by all. Our higher purpose is to provide resources that help to build a capable state that nurtures sustainable economic growth, social development, and that serves the well-being of all South Africans. In an era characterized by rapidly evolving technological innovation, SARS is preparing young talent that will enable a digitized organization. Our work is increasingly informed by data-driven insight, machine learning, algorithms, artificial intelligence, and interconnectivity of people and devices. The Emerging Talent Unit, responsible for identifying and developing new talent, is working closely with the Technology and Solutions Delivery Unit with a wide variety of experts to guide and develop young talent in the IT space. I think the big question is, however, how do we bring new talent or graduates without experience to SARS? And the answer is simple. We enroll them into graduate development programs. And therefore, we have this specific unit that we call Emerging Talent that is responsible for identifying and developing these new and young talent in the organization. The ultimate aim of this unit at the end of the day is for us to fill skills gaps within the organization in order to achieve our strategic objectives. I think if you look at the pictures on the screen, it's very simple. We start by identifying talent, and therefore we bring them to the organization, we develop them, and at the end of the day, we decide whether we're going to harvest them within the organization, therefore appoint them into permanent positions, or whether we're going to deploy them to the market. Now, what are the programs that we offer at SARS to bring these new or young talent into the organization. And we have various programs within the organization. The first one that we've got is the Chartered Accountant Articles Program, which is a structured learning program. And this program is specifically aimed at graduates who wish to become chartered accountants. This program is managed in partnership with the South African Institute of Chartered Accountants, SAICA, like most of you will know. And the duration of this program is 36 months. Looking at the audience that we've got this morning, most of you will fall within the next program that we've got here, that is the Graduate Development Program. This is also a structured program that provides a combination of learning and workplace experience to learners. And this is specifically aimed at individuals who are in possession of a tertiary qualification. The duration is normally 24 to 36 months. When I speak about what a structured program is, in lame terms, we provide our graduates with what we call a learner activity manual. And this learner activity manual guides them throughout the 24 months of their development program on what learning outcomes do they need to achieve within this 24 months. They are also expected to keep a portfolio of evidence that we will look at towards the end of the program in order to decide whether they successfully completed the program. If we look at the next program, the internship program, the only difference between the graduate development program and the internship program is that the internship program, we don't necessarily require a tertiary qualification. We sometimes take in matrics or a scholar with the equivalent qualification. It's also 24 months like the graduate program. And then something else that we have is what we call the external bursary scheme. And this is a deliberate financial assistance intervention that we offer to disadvantaged students at tertiary institutions. It is a fully funded bursary that we provide to these students, and this one obviously lasts for the duration of the bursary. Something else that we introduced last year is what we call a customs cadet program. Now, this program is also very similar to the graduate development program. The only difference here is that this is specifically aimed at customs and border operations because we want to build a lot of capacity and capability in that area. This slide is just to show you what we call our emerging talent process flow. And I'm just going to take you through the slide just to demonstrate to you, sitting from where you are, what do we look at from the starting point till the end. First of all, I think it's important to mention to you that whatever we do in this organization, we need to align it to our strategy. So when we decide to enroll graduates into a program, we first look at, do we have a business need in the organization? Then secondly, we need to attract the talent to come to our organization, and therefore we market our organization externally before we recruit. What we are doing here today is part of those attraction interventions. Then we recruit and we select, and when we enroll the graduates, we induct them into the organization. Only after the induction, we really start with the training and development of these graduates. We recently introduced a new approach as it was decided by our commissioner, and that is to start when we enroll graduates to train them first on our core business areas. So our graduates will typically spend a few months in the service environment and then they will go to the compliance audit environment before we train or send them to the area of specialization. And then at the end of the program, we evaluate them, we assess them, and then we make a decision whether we're going to appoint them into SARS or whether we're going to release them to the market. So that is in a nutshell, the short and the sweet of the process that we follow for our development programs. How do we market our development programs? Now, first of all, career fair campaigns. I must admit, this is something that we didn't get to do since COVID. I think the last time that we were actually able to do it was in 2019, and we're definitely going to revisit this and start doing these campaigns again. Then we also have a responsive website in partnership with communications within SARS. And we have social media campaigns. So the social media campaigns and platforms that we use is typically Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. We also do market or partake in marketing research. Surveys and focus groups are being done. We also have virtual platforms to engage scholars and students like today. And then we also do it by building relationships with universities, career development and research centers, admissions and counselors, lecturers, and disability centers. I think the big question for all of you is, how do I apply for opportunities at SARS? All applications or job seekers must create an account on the SARS career page and create a candidate profile. And once you've created that profile, you can then apply for any job advertised by SARS. Alternatively, you can use your LinkedIn profile to apply for advertised positions. You also have the option to search for opportunities that match the profiles by using the search functionality. And for details on the current advertised job opportunities and to apply online, you can visit our website at www.sars.gov.za. Go to careers at SARS. I know that most of you will also ask me when these opportunities will be advertised, because if you go today to the website, you won't find it there. Unfortunately, I won't be able to give you an exact date. And I therefore recommend that you visit our website on a regular basis and also check social media to see whether there are any opportunities. I also just want to mention to you that we're not allowed to accept any manual applications, and therefore we don't accept any CVs that are sent to us. So please remember that you do need to apply online. That's the only way that we can consider your application. And that is my story in a nutshell. Thank you, Mandla.
Wow, thank you so much, Zanie. That is a great presentation. And I'm so excited to hear the different opportunities that are available to our students. We've heard about bursaries, we've heard about internship opportunities, and we've also heard about the graduate development program. And I think it's great for our students to hear, that not only does SARS make things happen in terms of, providing the finances for all the essential services to take place in this country, but in doing so, they give our students an opportunity to participate, in this worthy cause, of bringing about a viable economy and bringing about funding for essential services. To our students, I'd like to say, I hope you've taken down some good notes. There've been some good gems that have come out there. I hope you followed the recruitment process. First of all, they do their best to attract talent. but in doing so, they want to identify. So the question that should be going through your head, is how can I set myself up to be that student or to be part of those students that are identified? Because that's the first point. You then get into these programs, and then from then on, you want to be formally recruited, you want to be enrolled. So not only do you need to stand out for you to be able to be identified, but you also need to stand out during that program so that you can actually get retained. And one of the things I heard is that, there's an evaluation process, and that's part of what we train you for, during your time at UKZN here. That's why assessments are important. You also heard that you'll be given a curriculum, a program to follow through the graduate program. So all of this just goes to show, that if you're intentional, if you're focused, there are opportunities out there. And it's good for you to know that while you are here at UKZN, our role is to provide you with quality education and also, to facilitate you getting opportunities. And we'd like to give you the best education that's possible. And in that effort, we partner with people like SARS to come in, and give us some tips in terms of quality assurance, for example. We teach you how to code. But how does that work on a big scale? How do you make sure that your programs aren't going to crash? How do you make sure that things happen smoothly and flawlessly as possible? There's best practice out there, and we can learn from the best. And today we're privileged to have someone from SARS who not only practices this, but who's actually the head, of quality, software quality and management. So in the next part of our talk, I'm going to introduce you. I have the pleasure of introducing you to Dillon Gounder. Dillon is an area head for software quality management and testing at SARS with 19 years experience. He has a postgraduate degree in project and program management and 15 years experience in software quality assurance. Dillon is an accomplished individual with a powerful force in the workplace and uses his positive attitude and vibrant energy to encourage others to work hard and succeed. He is inspired by good family values, which are important to both him and his family. Dillon, I have the pleasure of inviting you to please share with our listeners what you have prepared. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Gwetu. And thank you for the opportunity for me to present today. I just want to share my screen firstly. Okay, so good afternoon, students. And the UKZN colleagues. I'm hopeful my presentation today would be eventful and give you some insight into one of the phases within the software development lifecycle. Sorry, can everyone see my slide?
Yes, Dillon.
Can you see it? Okay, perfect. Sorry, just went blank on my side. Apologies for that. Yeah, I'm hopeful my presentation would give you some insight into the phases within the software development lifecycle. And today I'm going to introduce you to the software quality assurance, which is one of the most critical parts of the lifecycle. Okay, what is software quality management? It's the purpose of software quality management and testing is to ensure that software released into the SARS production environment is of acceptable levels of quality, as well as meeting requirements of both intended customer base and technology that the environment requires. Some of the models or the most critical model that's followed from a SARS perspective is the V model. I'm not sure if some of you are aware of it, but the traditional waterfall model, which most organizations use, have been advanced into something called the V model, which is a linear approach to the waterfall model, and turns it back onto itself in order to allow for parallel linear planning of certain quality assurance and technical tasks. From the software quality assurance perspective, the V model advocates the association of the level of testing within each phase in the design and development of a system. So as you can see, in each of the levels, you can actually go back and forth from an operational perspective to a user acceptance testing and back, including going through the life cycle from the start, which is the operations, then from the business requirements and so forth, all the way ending to the user acceptance testing and a full circle back. So that what makes this model quite powerful in the event that you can at any point test any part of the process within this life cycle. So just to give you a bit more, yes?
Dillon, I'm very sorry to interrupt so rudely. We are still seeing your first page on your slide. We're not seeing the V model slide. I'm sorry to interrupt like that.
Apologies. There we go.
Yes, there we go. Thank you
Is
so
that
much.
better?
Yes.
Apologies. So just to give you some introduction into what each of these phases mean. So starting with the operational requirements. The operational requirements is a set of minimum standards that the IT systems are required to meet in order to be eligible for a release to the SARS production environment. Now, we have to start somewhere in the software development lifecycle. And to start with, you need a requirement. What is the customer required or business requirement? And once we've established that, we move into the next phase, which is user acceptance testing, which is non-functional. So we're not actually testing the software at this stage. We're ensuring that the testing of the requirements conform to the IT system that has what operational requirements of the organization or the customer required before we move into the production environment. Now, the second level, which is business and functional requirements. Business requirements are business needs that are fulfilled in order to meet certain high-level objectives. They describe what is required and are functional and are documented within the business requirements documentation. Functional requirements present a detailed breakdown of the manner in which a set of specific business requirements will be met through the implementation of systems and processes. They describe how the requirements will be met and documented within the functional specification document. Now, what does this mean? Once we've established what business requires, we need to now outline exactly each requirement so we don't miss something. So these are discussions between the various teams from business as well as IT to come up with these requirements, to give us detailed requirements. So when we start development, we know exactly what the system should do, how it should present, and then what would the outcome be? What would this achieve from a business perspective or a customer perspective? The next step, which is where I would be spending most of the time today discussing, is software qualification. It is where it's concerned is the execution of the functional and performance tests, including security, in order to ensure that a system meets requirements stipulated. Functional testing may be performed manually by using a testing resource that executes test cases, which I would share a bit more later on in the presentation, or automation, which is using tools, software tools to actually test code, which is quite critical in terms of software testing, because as applications grow, we need to somehow have a tool that can assist us to faster test. As we know, time is not always on our side when it comes to software development as well as testing. We're limited in terms of time. So any assistance we can get to fast track a process, and that's where automation plays a major role. Now, performance testing is also something that's system-based. It's a technique used to confirm that the system is able to process information at a desired level and operate under load during periods of prolonged stress. So as you would know, SARS has a filing season once a year where we have over 5 million taxpayers that submit returns, and we need to ensure that when a taxpayer or customer rather logs into our system, we can handle those volumes. And that's why we include performance testing as part of our testing approach. The next level, which is the architectural design, once we have the requirements in place and we know exactly what we're going to develop, we need to start designing to understand how is the system going to be built and how will it integrate with other systems within the complexity of other applications within SARS. Because remember, we have multiple systems and each system needs to talk to each other so we can get a final result that's required by business or the customer. The next level, which is integration testing. Integration testing is a systems test that's done by the technical team and ensures that the solution is ready to be handed over to systems qualification and testing. It is guided by a set of integration test cases. So it's more on a technical level to ensure all the components within the development actually works as it should, and it's integrated with the rest of the applications within the SARS greater landscape. So from there, we have the technical design, which dictates exactly how a system is built, and again, how it will integrate with other systems. So there's two parts to it. Integration testing also covers part of that, but from a technical design perspective, they ensure that we meet that main requirement. Moving on to software development, which is also the key part. Obviously, if we don't have software developed, we can't test. So that's the start of the process after we have the documentation in place. It's the process during which functional and technical requirements are used to create software applications. The final product of software development will be submitted for quality assurance before it is released into the SARS production environment. That's basically the majority of the projects go through a SARS V model lifecycle. We do have other processes that we follow, but as I've mentioned, that majority of them go through the V model process. Now, what are the various types of testing? So we have quite a few actually. So I'm just going to touch base on a few, on most critical ones that's used within the SARS landscape. So we have software system qualification, which covers static testing. I'll get into a bit more detail shortly. Smoke testing, functional and usability testing, automation testing, performance testing, and regression testing. The other part would be the operational acceptance testing, which is more your non-functional, which is your vulnerability or security testing, as some of you may know it as. Rollback testing, roll forward testing, distribution and stability testing. And lastly, as you would know, disaster recovery testing is something that every organization would require. Should we have a disaster, we need to know how do we recover from that. So giving you a bit more detail in terms of the various types of testing. Static testing is something that's carried out by looking at your documentation, being it your BRS, which is your business requirements functionality, or functional specifications. in order to ensure that the requirements are met. And that is basically not executing anything on the application itself, but using documentation to test. Smoke testing is quite important. It forms the start of the process. Before we get into functional testing, we need to do a set of tests to ensure the system is integrated and working as it should before we actually get into the full-on functional test, which is the next one that I'm going to mention. So functional testing and usability testing is something that we execute test cases where the test team, which includes the testers, the test analysts, as well as the test manager, to ensure that the system requirements that we've outlined earlier in the process and the system that's developed are aligned and developed as the business user intended it to be used. The next step is automation, which I've touched on. It's basically using automated tools or software tools to do the testing on behalf of the manual tester. It's more for your regression testing because, as you would know, as systems grow, we still need to ensure when we update the software packages that the prior functionality is still working as it should, and that's where automation plays a major role within the process. Performance testing is quite critical. It's to ensure that concurrency is covered. Is a system able to ensure that we can handle the loads, the stress? If we submit large files, will the system crash? Will it process successfully within the adequate time as stipulated in the BRS, which is the business requirements documentation, and the functional spec? The next step is the regression testing. Regression testing is all prior software that exists currently in production. We would need to test that as well to ensure that any new changes introduced didn't break current functionality. So it's also quite critical that we ensure that when we do move forward, we're not breaking what's already there. And then lastly, the sanity testing. It's basically a subset of regression tests. We utilize these tests when we don't have enough time. If we have a quick fix, which is a production fix that we would like to test, and we normally have very limited time for that, we would require a faster turnaround time. So then a sanity test would be a subset of the regression test to ensure that by executing a few full end-to-end scenario, we would then obviously cover the testing there and ensure that the system isn't broken from a regression perspective. Okay, moving on. To operational acceptance testing. So vulnerability and security testing, and I'm sure some of you would have heard this terminology. It's quite critical from a software development perspective. We're ensuring that the system is not vulnerable to hackers. We ensure that the system is basically sound, safe. The information saved are not breached by any hackers out there that intend to interrogate or jeopardize any of the taxpayer information. And then rollback testing. Rollback testing is to ensure that should something go terribly wrong when we do deploy to production, how do we get out of that situation? How do we get to the previous state? So we test by rolling back, by reversing what we've put in terms of deployment of software. Are we able to actually remove the software without breaking what was already in production? So we test that to ensure that we can do it as quick as possible and obviously without breaking what we already had in production. So that's quite critical in the process to ensure that we're successful. In terms of roll forward testing, we would then obviously, after we roll back, we would need to roll forward to ensure that Should we then go back into production, we would be able to follow the same steps and get the desired outcome. Distribution testing, that's something we do within the technical space. As some of you would know, we use tools to distribute software, as we have a lot of machines out there, servers and so forth, so we can't do it manually. We use tools to distribute, so we need to ensure that when we distribute, it is actually deployed successfully without any errors and so forth. And that's why we cater for distribution testing as part of the life cycle. And then lastly, once we deployed successfully into production, we do a stability test to ensure that whatever we've deployed was successful and there's no errors that might have encountered during that process. Okay, moving on to the last point on types of testing, which is disaster recovery. As I've mentioned, disaster recovery testing is conducted to assess the effectiveness of restoration procedures that would be required in the event of a disaster. And I'm sure most organizations out there have covered this, but we ensure that we can still proceed and continue to service our taxpayers as well as our internal colleagues should we have a disaster, and we test how fast we can actually get the systems up and running, so we ensure that there's minimal downtime as possible. Okay, the testing phases within software quality management and testing. The process starts off with test registration. The project requirements are reviewed by the test manager, and we ensure that there's available project documentation. As I mentioned earlier, the business requirement specification as well as the functional requirement specification would be required in order for us to proceed. Once we identify and register the project, it then moves on to the test analyst, who would then analyze the requirements and ensure that the testing team is set up and we have adequate staff as well as documentation, and the requirements are complete to create the test plan, which is actually then what we use to proceed with our testing. And the next step would be your test planning. So once you have the test plan in place, the analyst would then go on to extract those requirements from the BRS as well as the functional spec, and from there he or she would register or add test cases on each of those requirements. So we'll have a test pack that we execute during the execution phase. Moving on to the execution phase, it's a day-to-day execution and monitoring of testing activities. It's something that's, we use a testing tool. In SARS, we use the micro focus tool called Test Complete, which is quite important because it tracks the execution process as well as provide reports to show us exactly where we are in the testing process, as well as any issues that may be encountered. So as you would know, when you test any software, there would be defects that come out of that. So on a regular basis, we would have defect meetings that are scheduled and chaired by the test analyst to ensure that testing is on track and the progress as well as the monitoring of defect resolution. There are regular feedback sessions with the test manager or area head to ensure that we're still within our timelines, and any issues that may be encountered are escalated at that point. And then lastly, we have the test closure. We have to close out each project to ensure that any lessons learned will be taken into account, and we close that project. So whatever we learned from that project, then we'll move on to the next project, as well as finalize or complete any administrative tasks that we couldn't have completed. Okay, and the next part, the next slide actually depicts our testing environment. So SQM makes use of two environments, which is the quality assurance environment, which we call QA, and bulk of our testing is conducted in this environment. And then the second one is the pre-prod environment, which is the final build that gets tested in this environment before we release into production. The final software, as you would know, would be released, and then we would do a stability check to ensure that it is stable. So, and obviously the start of the process is the development environment where the dev teams develop all their software before it then comes into our QA environment. So that's basically in a nutshell what SARS SQMNT does on a daily basis. So thank you, and I hope it was something that you could learn from. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Dillon. Certainly an exciting presentation. I learned a lot. I like the things that you emphasize, things that we normally take for granted. But when we hear them from you, they make so much sense, you know, in terms of why they're necessary. So, for example, some of the things I picked up, you know, you said, you know, you perform detailed requirements so you don't miss anything out, you know, and that is, it makes so much sense in the fact that, you know, when you're building a system, you don't want to take things for granted to say, you know, we know what needs to be done, but it needs to be explicitly stated, and there needs to be a formal checking process to make sure that all of that is adhered to. We also spoke about performance testing, you know, which is something that is so practical. You know, you spoke about the filing season, and, you know, there's a huge increase in terms of the usage of your system. And you need to anticipate that. You need to, you know, be intentional about making sure that your system can withhold that, you know, load. So thank you so much, Dillon. And to our students, you know, now we give you an opportunity to engage. You know, hopefully you've listened. Hopefully you've got some questions. Some of you have been putting your questions up in the chat box. So now we'll just give our experts the opportunity, you know, just to respond to some of those questions, and perhaps, you know, give you an opportunity as well to ask some more questions. So Zanie and Dillon, if I can just hand over to you in whatever order that you would like to perhaps respond to some of the questions. Yeah, and just lead us in this final stage where we just allow our students to interact with you directly.
Okay, and also one more thing, Mandla, if the students, any students would like to ask or pose the questions either to Dillon or Zanie, if they can raise their hands, please take this opportunity. You're not going to get a chance again like this, whether it's a TikTok question or whether it's a recruitment initiative question. So please, so for the brave ones, so I can see the questions are coming through. So for the even braver ones to put their hands up, there is a prize from PR sponsored by CAES. Please raise your hands and we'll be able to unmute you so you can pose your questions either to Dillon or Zanie.
Thank you so much, Lena.
Yeah, I think there's some questions in the chat box. If you'd like to read it out, maybe pose it to Dillon. We'll wait for the brave ones.
Yes. Thank you so much, Lena. Will do. So we've had a few questions about vacation work, you know, in terms of students wanting to get involved, and the response to that is at the moment there isn't vacation work at this stage. You know, we have had of other opportunities in terms of internship, graduate program, you know, so, you know, note what's important in those, because those are the opportunities that are currently available for you to actually become part of this exciting institution. Okay, then we've got questions about what type of programs are programmed for SARS. So that's one question that perhaps we can pose to you, Dillon, just in terms of, you know, you've taken us through, you know, the process of testing, the process of requirements analysis. but the student wants to know, can you give us an example of some of the functionality that's required within SARS of a system?
Thank you, Mandla. We have multiple technologies, so we do a lot of mobile work. We have a mobile app. I'm not sure if some of you have seen it. Web-based applications as well. And then our internal application is a thick client application. But within my space, the technology we use is VB scripting, which we utilize in our automation space. So I'm hoping that then answers that question.
Thank you so much. Perhaps can you give our students a hint in terms of some of the languages that you use? Perhaps somebody wants to give themselves a little bit of practice, some of the tools maybe that may be within their reach.
So I'm not sure how your program works, but in terms of UKZN, but we encourage students to use languages they are familiar with and quite confident using. Most of the languages are more or less the same, except for here and there we have different displays and codes, etc. So we encourage students to come in, find the language they prefer, and utilize that way. So most of our colleagues within the SQM&T space utilize VB, which is something that they find comfortable with, and it gives you a lot more in terms of development. And I wouldn't put it down, but in some cases they find it easier as well.
Thank you so much, Dillon. We've got a brave student, Ndobeko Shongwa. Thank you so much. I'm not sure if you can unmute yourself and pose your question. Thank you so much, Ndobeko. Okay, Ndobeko seems to have vanished. Okay, I hope I didn't scare you then, Ndobeko. But moving ahead with our questions, there's a few more questions that came through, and one of the listeners wanted to know in terms of your data storage. Surely there's volumes of data that is produced and consumed by SARS. Can you give us an idea in terms of the facilities that you use? Is it all cloud-based, for example, or do you have actual facilities for your data?
So yeah, good question. We do consume a lot of data, and all data would need to be stored due to the sensitivity of the nature of the data. We have on-site storage. We recently embarked on cloud. Remember, we as an organization, especially as SARS, we need to protect taxpayer data. So cloud was not something we initially wanted to get into because of the security risks at that time, but we've moved quite advanced in that sector, and we're now starting to explore a bit more in terms of how we then move some of our data into the cloud. But majority of our data is stored on site.
Thank you so much, Dillon. And Zanie, we've got a question for you here in terms of the graduate program. There's a question to say, do you have a graduate program for data science? Perhaps other students may want to know in terms of, what are your hot areas? You have told us that you've got a specific program, I think, for accountants. But can you give us an idea in terms of the fields that your graduates feed into?
Thanks, Mandla. Yes, we definitely do have. I just want to explain to the students that at SARS, even though we have a psycho-accredited program for our CAs, when we look at our graduate program, it covers across the board. When you come to SARS and when you think about SARS, you think about revenue collection. And you would typically think about a person with a qualification in that field. But let me assure you, we have multiple areas where we that we cover. We have a legal department, we have our IT department, and like Dillon explained to you, there are multiple facets for that specific area. We definitely have data, a big need for data science and data analysts in the organization and on the graduate program. We've got a need for auditing, finance. So there is really quite a lot of opportunities at SARS.
Thank you so much for that. I'm going to ask Ntobeko to come through. And then from there, we'll ask Sipini Shansha.
Hi, Sanbon.
Yebo, Zanie.
I wanted to ask, do SARS have machine learning engineers in higher machine learning engineers, and what if they are, do they hire interns, and if they do, what's the procedure for application and stuff, and if the thingy, how do how do they process information? Oh, that's what I wanted to ask.
Okay.
Thank
you so much.
Information like documents and stuff.
Thank you so much, Ntobeko. I'm just going to ask you to mute yourself while I give our experts an opportunity to answer. So that question, can go both ways. Perhaps, Dillon, you can just give us an indication in terms of some of the systems that you develop. Is there room for artificial intelligence, machine learning? Are you exploring that direction? And perhaps Zanie can come in as well.
Yes, that technology is definitely being explored. We utilize it in some instances, but definitely an area that we would like to grow in the future. But at the moment, we're not at that level yet. But maybe Zanie can share a bit more from an HR perspective.
Thank you so much.
I just want to mention that at the moment, last year we enrolled 215 graduates into various graduate programs in the organization, but we didn't enroll any interns. So we can't offer any internships at this point in time. I just want to make that clear. So no interns at this point in time.
Great, thank you so much. Friends, we are running out of time, so I'll probably just have time for 2 more questions. So I'm going to ask Sipini Shansha just to go for it. And then lastly, I'll ask Ayush as well.
Oh, Sambana.
Yebo, Unjani.
Yebo, siyaphila nathi. Ngabona laphana kubhaliwe ngendaba zama-workshop nama-bursaries nayo mina just require to look into before considering to apply or before nimspare ukuthi nidinga i-average engakanani performance kanjalo and so on.
Okay, this is a question for you, Zanie. The student would like to know, just in terms of, guidelines, fair and fine is aware that, there's a procedure, there's applications, there's place to apply. But in terms of the caliber or the requirements that you're looking for example, what kind of average would set him up to be an ideal candidate for your selection? Can you give any advice in that direction?
I assume you're talking about once you completed your tertiary qualification and you want to enroll into a graduate program, or are we talking about the bursaries?
I think perhaps if you can give us an idea for both, Okay. I think he was mainly talking about the graduate program.
Okay, when we obviously look at the graduate program, we open it up for anyone to apply, but how when we shortlist, we obviously look at your highest qualification. And then sorry about this. And then we obviously also look at what was the marks that you obtained during your qualification. So you have to compete, and like every other company or organization, we want the best of the best, if I can put it that way. So make sure that you really get the marks at university to set you aside from the next person, because it will just make you more marketable when you come to an organization like SARS. When we look at the bursary side, and I think we did indicate that in the chat box, is that in order for you to be considered, we only look at candidates with an average of at least 60% to consider them for a bursary.
Thank you so much, Zanie. So some useful insight for you there, our students. If you're looking for a bursary, at least 60%. If you're looking to get into the programs, you need to really set yourself above the competition, not only at UKZN, but nationally. Colleagues, unfortunately, we run out of time, but I've just got time perhaps just for one more question. So I'm just going to ask Ayush just to go for it with his question or her question.
Hello. I just
Hi,
wanted
Ayush.
to know, so once you receive your degree, just graduated from university, most people will have little to no experience. So as an aspiring software developer, what can I do to stand out in terms of experience on my CV when applying to SARS?
Oh, great question. I'm not sure, Dillon, if you could come in there, just in terms of tips, maybe, example activities they can get involved in terms of what would, be ideal skills that are relevant to them at this level that they can prepare themselves, in terms of standing out. And perhaps Zanie as well, you can come in from an HR perspective in terms of the things you look out for, given the fact that these students don't have as much experience at that stage. Thanks.
Yep. So I'll touch a bit on it, but I think this question is more for Zanie. As part of the graduate program, we train the graduates. We also then send them on specific training for the job that they would be working under. So if it's software development, we would advance their training in that field, as well as coach them along the way. So we would start them off with smaller applications to build that experience. And as Zanie mentioned, it's a 24 to 36 month period where we work with the graduates to give them that experience and exposure to get to that point where they either appointed within SARS or then released to the market.
Mandla, if I can just come in there. I think the good news about the SARS graduate program is that we don't expect graduates to have any experience. The whole aim of this program is to give opportunities to our unemployed youth in South Africa. So we're not going to look at whether you've got any experience. You're definitely not going to have an advantage if you've got experience. We're purely going to look at your academic records, whether you've got the qualification that is required. And like Dillon indicated, once we bring you to the organization, we will provide you with that workplace experience that you need.
That is such good news. Thank you so much, Zanie, for that. And I'm sure our students are encouraged to learn, that don't worry about the experience, focus on your grades. Unfortunately, we are out of time and would like to respect that you have to study, that some of you have got your tests. We also like to respect our, invited guests. Thank you so much to Zanie and Dillon and your team for coming to meet our students, for sharing your knowledge and opportunities. Thank you for partnering with us as we serve our students. We look forward to continued collaboration with SARS. To our listeners, mainly the students, thank you for hitting the call to come to these tech talks. Thank you for participating. Thank you for all the questions that you've given. And we'd like to say there's more in store, as far as tech talks are concerned. So please keep an eye out on your mailboxes, on Moodle, and you'll be finding out more about the different, other institutions and companies that we'll be inviting to come and share with you. So I believe hopefully there might be an advert for the next TikTok that will be shared with us shortly. But other than that, you will certainly be getting that either in your mailboxes or on Moodle. So thank you so much to our SARS experts, and thank you to our students. Thank you to our PR department. Thank you to Lena for facilitating all of this and hosting as well. Lena, I'm not sure if you'd like to, say a few words. And there we have it, everyone. This is our next TikTok series that's going to be happening on the 1st of June. So please look out for that. They should be as well, and in a place where you can click and register there. Other than that, I think we can wrap it up and look forward to meeting you all again. So thank you, everyone.